Well, these kind of things on the joint work with Udai Pareek, which has lasted over almost about 1970 to 2010, about 40 years of working together, is difficult to summarize in a few minutes. I've already talked about our work in entrepreneurship, our work in behavioral sciences and population studies. Now I'll come to the interesting work we had done in the early stage of IIM Ahmedabad, which was published into a good number of books, at least about 5 different publications. The first project we had done was with the Gujarat Agriculture University. And the project was, I think Gujarat Agriculture University was just then formed, combining 3 campuses: the campus at Anand, Junagadh, and Valsad, and fourth campus at Dantewada was supposed to exist. So 4 of them together, they were all agriculture colleges combined and formed a Gujarat Agriculture University. And the vice chancellor of that university, who was formerly secretary in government of Gujarat, invited Ravi Mathai and the education group to study the university and help us to build a great university. So our approach to that was, let us study the college, the climate of the college. So we developed an institutional and environment questionnaire by visiting these colleges, talking to faculty, talking to select groups of researchers, and wanted to see, because if you are starting a university, you should have very common climate, and the climate should be very much encouraging to education, encouraging to teaching and extension. So we did that, and then later we used the tool to administer how the people, various people, both the students and faculty and administrative staff, perceive the climate, and how do we improve the climate so that the research, teaching and extension atmosphere can be improved. Udai Pareek, Ravi Mathai and I, 3 of us later published this as a book called Management Processes in Universities. This was the time, of course, this book came sometime in 1978, but 3 years before that, as soon as I joined, the issue which Ravi and a number of people were concerned was that of autonomy in colleges or institutions. IIM already got a great brand name, and the reason attributed to that was, besides the leadership of Ravi Mathai, the autonomy that was the leaders at IIM, which is Ravi Mathai, Vikram Sarabhai, were able to create. So we wanted this principle, philosophy to be disseminated. So Udai and Mathai together invited about 15 to 20 stalwarts in education, and we called this decision making in institutions of higher education, which included people like Naidamma, Ishwar Dayal, Dharnisana, Kamla Chaudhary, and so many other people from across the country. They came and they shared their experience of building different institutions and the importance of autonomy. So we put these papers together with Ravi Mathai, Udai Pareek and me, 3 of us as co-authors. This was published by All India Management Association, From Stagnation to Renewal, Institution Building in Institutions of Higher Education. So this is the second book on education. The third book which Udai and I had done was when we were invited by UNESCO, Bangkok. We went there to develop a handbook for training trainers in education management. It was not one trip, it was many trips that we made. We developed a manual explaining different kind of teaching technologies or training technologies, including we conceptualized distance learning at the time. We reviewed the worldwide kind of experiences. So we prepared a handbook for training educational administrators, which was later published. This was published much later in the year 2003 or so, because the UNESCO went on circulating the earlier version of the handbook to many people. So this is the third book on educational entrepreneurship you can talk about in the field of education and so on. Then in coming to organizational behavior, I think this is where the work we had done at University of Udaipur, collecting all the instruments, it came to some kind of a fruition in the year 1974-75. We published the first handbook of instruments in psychological and social instruments. This was published by Samasti, but later taken over by Concept Publication. with DM Pestenji's collaboration. I think this later became volume 2 and volume 3 and things like that. Another book on which Udai and I worked on was the behavior process in organizations with Dr. Pestenji as a co-author. We wanted to do this as a textbook for MBA students. All three of us were teaching MBAs, and we were not very happy with the kind of material available. We knew that we were teaching some good concepts like team building, interpersonal competence, creativity, and a little bit on institution building, internal locus of control, interpersonal competence, so many things, individual, group dynamics, and interpersonal dynamics, and things like that. So we all decided to bring out a book, Behavior Process in Organizations, authored by three of us, published by. So these are some of the organizational behavior contributions. I have so far not talked of HRD. I think the foundation for our HRD books was laid by our work in Larsen and Toubro. Along with Udai, interviewing people in L&T and conceptualizing the HRD function, conceptualizing HRD department, and later on my joining Bharat Earth Movers to implement actually HRD. All this put together, we had a good theory as well as practice available. So at IIM Ahmedabad in 1978, towards the end of 1978-79, we decided to hold a national workshop where we invite all the people and test out our ideas on HRD. By the time HRD was just becoming popular, I had written articles on HRD, old wine in new bottle, etc., etc. So we invited a large number of people, and we had about 35 to 40 participants. Udai wrote the first three parts of conceptual part of it, drawing from whatever we have put for L&T, and I have written my experiences part of it, and interspersed with various chapters on different subsystems of HRD, including performance appraisal, including coaching, including OD and its linkages, and so on and so forth. So that gave birth to the book called Designing and Managing HR Systems, the first comprehensive book of HRD, brought out in 1981, which has gone also a Scott Award, became a textbook of many universities. We revised it twice. The last revision was sometime in the year 2003, when Udai was actually had a fracture and was down and recovering at his home. I think I used to go there, and he would review some chapters, I would review some chapters. So we revised it, and for last 17 and odd years, this book has not been revised. So this is the other one on HRD. Our own work with Larsen and Toubro, we requested L&T to release the 2 consulting reports. After we started the Academy of HRD, L&T gave us permission. So the book Pioneering HRD in L&T was published sometime in the year 1998 or so. This was the time when the Academy of HRD India started collaborating with the Academy of HRD USA, and we decided to hold the first Asian HRD conference with Dr. Ghani from Singapore at that point of time, David McLean, and a whole lot of others. We conceptualized this, and we held the conference at IIM Bangalore. Ram Narayan joined us, Uma Jain was facilitating this, Udai Pareek. So all of us brought together another volume called HRD in Asia. This is the Academy of HRD USA and Academy of HRD India papers. An important thing that I must mention at this point of time, after we conceptualized the HRD department, and when I went to Bharat Earth Movers to start the HRD department there, we needed training manuals, particularly in performance appraisal. That was the time Udai and I together prepared 3 manuals, one operating manual, one skills book, and another trainer's manual. 3 books on performance appraisal and review. These 3 books were published in the year 1978, and large number of copies we made, and we started using them from large number of training programs. But on this I went on reviewing. Unfortunately, Udai could not join in some of my reviews. So finally this became a revised manual, which I think today TVRLS, Nandini and team use in TVRLS. So this is another interesting book on performance management. And also both Udai and I facilitated we created a concept called roundtable concept in the Academy of HRD. One of the roundtables was on recent experiences in performance appraisal and redesigning performance appraisal. So the various papers presented in this we brought out in a book form, which was published by again Tata McGraw-Hill as redesigning performance management systems. So all in all, if you look at in HRD, our joint publications of Udai and me include about 5-6 of them: designing and managing HR systems, performance appraisal manuals, Larson and Toubro one, and the Asian HRD, and the review redesigning performance management systems and things like that. So friends, I think I've given a bit of a rundown of the number of books. A large part of all our work was done in the first 10 years of my association with Dr. Pareek. One of the books on which I started my initial work with Udai, Impact of Classroom Behavior of Teachers on Student Mental Health. That is the project I joined. Later, after Udai left, he made me the principal investigator of this ICMR project. And this book was published as Changing Teacher Behavior through Feedback. This book, of course, we went on thinking that we'll publish it, but it was only in the last decade of Udai's life here. We went to ICFI, and I think he got it published by ICFI publications. The feedback, impact of feedback on changing teacher behavior. Well, I think what are the lessons of this joint work? I think when two people put together, one of them certainly need to initiate the other one, particularly the senior professional should hold hands, should initiate, and should set an example. And Udai that way has been a great example by his hard work, by his conceptualization, and by giving credit. I think he is always, the way he gives credit to you by even going to the extent of even making you as the first author is a remarkable kind of a thing. This is one quality which I think all of us will have to think of. Second thing is document whatever our experiences, reflect, talk. I think we all have in our lives, we all come across very interesting kind of experiences, but many of us don't document. If you start documenting, you can write books. Nowadays, quite unlike, I think, in the first decade of our working together, where we had to keep writing with our hand. In fact, there were days when I used to complain of my hands aching and so on, because there was no computer. It was only in mid-80s we started having, or late 80s, we started having the luxury of having a computer, having a typist who would get into the computer and so on. So hard work, conceptualization, discussions, putting it on a piece of paper, I think these are some of the things. And I am through these two short videos, which I am only paying my tribute to Dr. Udai Pareek, from whom I have learned a great deal. So the fact that 25% to 30% of my books in the first 10-15 years of our association were due to, I think, Udai's involvement is the biggest tribute. I think later on, whatever I have done in the subsequent years, I think foundation has been laid. Even when I started a consulting company, unless I document whatever I have learned, I've become restless. So in fact, I keep telling people, I have done a lot more writing after I left IIM Ahmedabad than while I was at, but I think the foundation has been laid there. So I want to thank Udai, and I want to thank all of you for giving this opportunity and listening to this. Hope to see you as big writers and authors in the contemporary world. All the best, and my tributes to Dr. Udai Pareek.